Will you dance with me? My ex is watching.
Will you dance with me? My ex is watching, she whispered, unaware he was the most feared duke in the kingdom. The royal gala was a sea of silken judgment, and Catherine Griffiths was drowning in it. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, her sapphire gown shimmering under the chandeliers, but inside she felt like she was crumbling. Across the room, Connor Arnold, the man who had publicly humiliated her and destroyed her family's name, was holding court with London's elite. His eyes found hers, and that cruel smile spread across his face. He was walking toward her, ready to deliver another cutting remark in front of the king himself. Panic seized her chest. She needed to escape. She needed air. Turning sharply, her gaze landed on a man standing alone near the shadows. He was tall, impossibly still, dressed in a dark tailored suit with gold military embroidery that caught the light. His features were sharp, striking, almost severe, and his presence seemed to silence the noise around him. He looked like he could command an army with a single glance. Desperation made her bold. Catherine crossed the marble floor, her heart hammering so loud she thought everyone could hear it. She stopped in front of him, and when he turned those cold, calculating eyes on her, she whispered the words that would change everything. "Will you dance with me? My ex is watching." A long silence stretched between them. She expected rejection. She expected mockery. Instead, his lips curved into the faintest, most dangerous smile she had ever seen. He extended his hand. "It would be unwise to refuse a lady in distress," he said, his voice low and edged with something unreadable. As his gloved hand closed around hers, a chill ran through her. The entire ballroom fell silent. Heads turned. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Because Catherine Griffiths had just asked the Iron Duke of the North to dance, the man rumored to have no heart. The man, even the king feared, and he had said yes. What Catherine didn't know was that Brogan Duncan never did anything without a reason. And tonight, she had just become part of his plan. If you're ready for more stories where the unexpected happens, where the forgotten rise, and where the underdogs turn the game around, make sure to hit that subscribe button now. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from and what's on your mind. Your thoughts are always welcome here, and I'd love to hear your take on tonight's story. Don't forget to like, share, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a moment of the drama, the revenge, and the secrets waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to the family, here at Forbidden Secret Love Chronicles. The waltz began, and Catherine found herself swept into a dance that felt nothing like the practiced steps she had learned in finishing school. Brogan Duncan moved with military precision, each turn calculated, each step deliberate. His hand on her waist was firm but not possessive, his grip on her gloved fingers almost reverent. She could feel the eyes of every person in the ballroom boring into her back, the weight of their collective shock pressing down on her shoulders. Connor Arnold stood frozen near the refreshment table, his face a mask of disbelief and something else. Fear, perhaps. The Duke did not speak at first. He simply led, guiding her through the sea of dancers who parted for them like subjects before royalty. Catherine risked a glance upward and found his eyes already on her, studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. They were dark, almost black in the candlelight, and they held secrets she could not begin to fathom. "You are trembling," he observed, his voice barely above a murmur. "I did not expect you to accept," Catherine admitted, her voice steadier than she felt. "And yet you asked." "I was desperate." "Desperation," he said, a ghost of amusement touching his features, "makes people do interesting things." The music swelled, and he spun her in a move that brought gasps from the onlookers. When she came back to him, she was closer than before, close enough to see the faint scar along his jawline, close enough to smell the scent of bergamot and something darker, like smoke and iron. "Who are you?" Catherine whispered, though even as she asked, the truth was beginning to dawn on her. The deference of the crowd, the military bearing, the way even the king's guards had straightened when he moved. "You do not know?" There was something almost playful in his tone now, as if he were enjoying a private joke at her expense. "I know what they say about the Iron Duke," Catherine replied, lifting her chin. "That he is ruthless, that he destroyed 3 noble houses for betraying the crown, that his heart is as cold as the north he commands." "And do you believe what they say?" Catherine met his gaze directly. "I believe that rumors are often built on fragments of truth, twisted until they serve whoever is speaking." For the first time that evening, Brogan Duncan smiled. It was not a kind smile, but it was genuine. "You are sharper than your circumstances suggest, Miss Griffiths." The use of her name startled her. "You know who I am. Everyone knows who you are. The daughter of the disgraced merchant, the woman Connor Arnold cast aside like spoiled fruit." His grip tightened fractionally. "He is watching us now. Shall we give him something to truly worry about?" Before Catherine could respond, the Duke pulled her into a dip so deep her hair nearly touched the marble floor. The ballroom erupted in scandalized whispers. When he brought her upright again, his face was inches from hers, and she could see the calculation behind his every move. This was not kindness. This was strategy. The music ended. Brogan released her with the same careful control he had shown throughout the dance, bowing with military precision. Catherine curtsied, her mind racing. Around them, the ton had fallen into a hushed, electric silence. Then the Duke did something that would be discussed in drawing rooms for months to come. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her gloved knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Griffiths," he said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "I trust we will be seeing much more of each other." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Catherine standing alone in the center of the ballroom, the object of every eye, every whisper, every speculation. Connor Arnold looked like he had swallowed glass. Catherine's maid, Anne, was waiting by the carriage when she finally escaped the gala, her face pale with worry. The ride home was silent except for the clatter of wheels on cobblestone. Catherine stared out the window at the dark London streets, replaying every moment of that dance, trying to understand what had just happened and what it would cost her. She did not sleep that night. She sat by her window watching the gas-lit streets and waiting for the inevitable storm. It arrived with the morning papers. Anne brought them to her room at dawn, her hands shaking as she set the stack on Catherine's writing desk. The scandal sheets were merciless. "Mystery lady captures the Iron Duke," proclaimed the Morning Chronicle. "Has London's most feared bachelor finally met his match?" asked the Society Observer. The worst was the Daily Tattler, which featured a lurid illustration of Catherine in Brogan's arms beneath the headline. "From rags to riches? Griffiths, girl snares, a duke." Catherine's father appeared in her doorway, the same papers clutched in his weathered hands. Edward Griffiths had aged 10 years in the month since Connor's family had destroyed his business, framing him for fraud to cover their own corruption. His shoulders, once proud, now sagged with the weight of public disgrace. "Catherine," he said softly, "what have you done?" Before she could answer, there was a commotion downstairs. Raised voices, Anne's protest, and then the heavy tread of boots on the stairs. Catherine's door swung open without so much as a knock, and Brogan Duncan filled the doorway, dressed in a dark riding coat and carrying a walking stick topped with a silver wolf's head. Behind him, Anne looked apologetic and terrified in equal measure. "Miss Griffiths," the Duke said, as if appearing uninvited in a lady's bedroom at dawn were the most natural thing in the world. "We need to talk." Edward Griffith stepped protectively in front of his daughter. "Your Grace, this is highly improper. So is allowing your daughter to be torn apart by vultures masquerading as society," Brogan replied calmly. He glanced at Catherine. "I assume you have seen the papers." "I have," Catherine said, finding her voice. "And I assume you have come to distance yourself from the scandal." On the contrary. Brogan moved into the room with the confidence of a man who had never been denied anything. I have come to propose a solution that benefits us both. I do not understand. Then allow me to be clear. Brogan's dark eyes fixed on hers with that same unnerving intensity from the ballroom. You need your family's name restored. You need protection from whatever vendetta Connor Arnold is clearly pursuing. I need something as well, Miss Griffiths. I need a woman of good breeding and respectable connections to stand beside me while I complete work that requires absolute social legitimacy. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé, Catherine said slowly, understanding dawning. I want you to be my fiancé, publicly, for a period of 6 months, perhaps longer depending on how matters unfold. In exchange, I will use my considerable resources to investigate the charges against your father and, if he is indeed innocent as you claim, clear his name. Edward made a sound of protest, but Catherine raised her hand. And what do you gain from this arrangement, Your Grace? Access, Brogan said simply. There are certain doors in London society that remain closed even to a duke, especially one with my reputation. Doors that will open for a man who appears to be courting a respectable young woman. Doors that lead to people I need to observe very carefully. You are using me as a disguise. I am offering you a trade. 6 months of your time and your presence at my side in exchange for your father's freedom and your family's restoration. Additionally, you will live at my estate under my protection during this period. Connor Arnold will not dare to move against you there. Catherine looked at her father, saw the hope and fear warring in his tired eyes, and knew she had no real choice. This was survival. This was the only path forward that did not end in complete ruin. I accept your terms, she said. Brogan smiled that dangerous smile again. Excellent. Pack your things, Miss Griffiths. We leave for the Iron Estate this afternoon. The Iron Estate sat 2 hours north of London, a sprawling Gothic manor of grey stone and sharp towers that looked like it had been carved from the surrounding forest. Catherine watched it emerge through the carriage window as they approached, her stomach tight with apprehension. Brogan had ridden ahead on horseback, leaving her to travel in his private carriage with only Anne for company. The luxury of the conveyance was staggering. Velvet seats, silver fixtures, even a small library of books secured in a mahogany case. This was wealth on a scale Catherine had only imagined. The staff awaited them at the entrance, a small army of servants lined up with military precision. A stern woman in black silk stepped forward as Catherine descended from the carriage. Miss Griffiths, I am Mrs. Blackwood, the head housekeeper. His Grace has instructed me to make you comfortable. Your rooms have been prepared in the East Wing. Catherine's rooms turned out to be a suite that would have housed her entire family comfortably. A bedroom with a 4-poster bed, draped in deep burgundy. A private sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds, and a dressing room large enough to be a ballroom. Anne gasped audibly at the sight. This is too much, Catherine murmured. His Grace insists his guests want for nothing, Mrs. Blackwood replied, her tone giving nothing away. Dinner is served at 8. His Grace requests your presence. The next 3 days passed in a strange limbo. Catherine saw Brogan only at dinner, where he was unfailingly polite but distant, asking about her comfort and her needs but volunteering nothing about himself or his work. During the days, she wandered the estate, discovering a library that rivaled any in London and Gardens that must have required a dozen groundskeepers to maintain. She found herself drawn to the North Tower, which Mrs. Blackwood had quietly suggested she avoid. Of course, that only made Catherine more curious. On the 4th evening, she finally asked. They were seated at opposite ends of a dining table long enough to seat 20, consuming a meal of roasted pheasant and spring vegetables. Why do you live here alone? Catherine said, breaking the careful silence. A house this size was built for a family. Brogan set down his wine glass with careful precision. It was built for my family. They are no longer here. I am sorry. Do not be. It was a long time ago. But his jaw had tightened, and Catherine knew she had touched on something raw. The tower, she pressed, emboldened by the wine and the strange intimacy of dining alone with this formidable man. Mrs. Blackwood said I should not go there. What is in the North Tower? Brogan was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, surprising her. Come with me. He led her through the darkened corridors of the estate, carrying a candelabra that cast dancing shadows on the stone walls. They climbed a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever, Catherine's breath coming faster as they ascended. Finally, Brogan pushed open a heavy wooden door and stepped into a circular room that took Catherine's breath away. It was an office, but also an armory. Maps covered every wall, some of England, some of Europe, some of places Catherine did not recognize. But what dominated the space was a massive table in the center, covered in documents, letters, and dossiers. Catherine moved closer and saw names. Noble names. Connor Arnold's name. This is what I do, Brogan said quietly. This is why the king tolerates my methods. I find traitors. I find those who would betray the crown for profit or power, and I destroy them before they can do irreparable harm. Catherine turned to face him. And Connor? Connor Arnold's family has been selling military intelligence to foreign powers for 3 years. They needed a scapegoat when their operation almost came to light. Your father was convenient. A merchant with access to shipping manifests and trade routes. A man whose word would not stand against a titled family. Brogan moved to stand beside her, looking down at the evidence he had collected. I have been building a case against the Arnolds for 18 months, but they are careful. They hide behind layers of social standing and old money. To get close enough to gather what I need, I require access to their inner circle. The doors you mentioned. Exactly. An engagement to you, a woman Connor once claimed as his own, will infuriate him. It will make him careless. And when people become careless, they make mistakes. Catherine felt suddenly cold. So I am bait. You are an ally, Brogan corrected, turning to face her fully. One I am paying handsomely for her cooperation. By clearing my father's name. Yes. Catherine studied the man before her, seeing him clearly for the first time. The Iron Duke was not heartless. He was wounded. The careful control, the isolation, the singular focus on justice, these were the tools of a man who had been betrayed so deeply that he no longer knew how to trust. What happened to your family? She asked softly. Brogan's expression shuddered. That is not part of our arrangement. No, Catherine agreed. But if we are to convince London society that we are courting, should I not know something true about the man I am meant to love? The word hung between them. Love. Such a strange, foreign concept in this transaction they had built. But Brogan did not look away. My father was the previous duke, he finally said. A good man. An honest man. He discovered that 3 families in his circle were embezzling funds meant for the king's navy. When he threatened to expose them, they killed him and made it look like suicide. Then they came for my mother and sister. His voice had gone flat, emotionless. I was 20, at war on the continent. I returned home to find them gone, and my family's name in tatters, destroyed by the very people my father had tried to bring to justice. Catherine's hand found his arm. Brogan, I spent 5 years rebuilding, gathering evidence. The king believed me, but he needed proof that would hold up before Parliament, so I gave it to him. All 3 families were stripped of their titles and their fortunes. 2 of the men hanged for treason. He looked down at her hand on his sleeve. That is why they call me the Iron Duke, because I am incapable of mercy when it comes to traitors. Not incapable, Catherine said. Just careful about where you spend it. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. For a moment, he looked younger, more vulnerable. Then, the moment passed, and the Duke was back. We should return, he said. You need rest. Tomorrow we attend Lady Ashford's garden party. Connor will be there. The gardens at Ashford House were legendary. 3 acres of manicured hedges, marble fountains, and blooming roses that perfumed the warm afternoon air. Catherine arrived on Brogan's arm, wearing a dress of pale green silk that Mrs. Blackwood had somehow procured overnight. It fit perfectly, making her look like spring itself, and she saw the approval in Brogan's eyes when she descended the stairs of the estate that morning. London society turned as one to watch them arrive. The whispers were a physical thing, a wave of speculation and scandal that followed in their wake. Brogan seemed unbothered, nodding coolly to acquaintances and guiding Catherine through the crowd with a possessive hand at the small of her back. They had discussed strategy during the carriage ride. She was to stay close to him, to smile and appear smitten, to give the gossips exactly what they wanted to see. It should have felt like a performance. Instead, it felt dangerously real. Connor Arnold found them by the rose arbor. He looked older than Catherine remembered, his handsome face harder, his eyes calculating as they took in the sight of his former fiancée on the Iron Duke's arm. "Your Grace," Connor said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "What a surprise to see you at such a frivolous gathering. I would have thought you too busy with your various investigations to attend garden parties." "Lady Ashford is an old friend," Brogan replied smoothly. "And I find myself with more time for social engagements these days." Connor's eyes slid to Catherine. "Catherine, you look well. Better than I expected, given recent circumstances." "I am well, thank you," Catherine said, keeping her voice level. "I must say, I was shocked to read about your sudden rise in prospects. From a disgraced merchant's daughter to a duke's intended in a matter of days. One might wonder what promises were made to secure such an advantageous match." The insult was thinly veiled. Catherine felt Brogan stiffen beside her, his hand tightening on her waist. Before he could respond, she stepped forward, meeting Connor's gaze with steel in her own. "One might wonder many things, Connor. For instance, one might wonder why a man so eager to distance himself from scandal would spend so much energy discussing a woman he claimed to want nothing to do with. But I suppose some people cannot resist the temptation to revisit their failures." Connor's face flushed red. "Your father is a criminal, Catherine. That has not changed simply because you have found a powerful man to hide behind." "Careful," Brogan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. "You are speaking to my future wife. I take great exception to anyone who insults her." "Future wife?" Connor laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Please, we all know what this is. She is using you for your name and your money, and you are using her for whatever game you are playing. But let me give you a warning, Your Grace. The Griffiths' name is poisoned. Association with it will only bring you trouble. I will take my chances," Brogan said. "Now, if you will excuse us, I believe Lady Ashford is serving tea." He steered Catherine away, but not before she caught the look of pure hatred on Connor's face. They found a quiet spot beneath a willow tree, away from prying eyes. Catherine's hands were shaking. "He's going to come after us," she said. "I am counting on it," Brogan replied. "You did well. Better than well. You stood your ground." "He frightens me," Catherine admitted. "Not physically, but the way he looks at me. Like I am something he owns that has been stolen." Brogan turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Catherine, look at me. Connor Arnold cannot touch you, not while you are under my protection. I have destroyed men far more powerful than him, for far less cause. He is nothing. But my father, your father will be cleared. I promise you this." And the way he said it, with such absolute certainty, made Catherine believe him. They stayed at the party for another hour, playing their roles perfectly. Catherine laughed at Brogan's dry observations about the other guests. He fetched her tea and stayed close enough that everyone could see the attentiveness of his courtship. By the time they left, the Ton was convinced. The Iron Duke had fallen. That night, Catherine found Brogan in the library, a glass of brandy in his hand and a leather-bound journal open on his lap. He looked up as she entered, surprise flickering across his features. "I could not sleep," she explained. "Too much excitement for one day." "Join me," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his. "I find the fire helps." Catherine settled into the chair, tucking her feet beneath her dressing gown. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crackle of the flames. "Tell me about them," Catherine finally said. "Your mother and sister." Brogan was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then he began to speak, his voice soft in the firelit room. "My mother was French. She loved gardening and music and terrible Gothic novels. My sister Elena was only 15. She wanted to be a painter. She was talented too, truly talented. After they died, I could not bear to look at her work. I locked all of her paintings in the North Tower and did not open that room for 3 years. And now I keep them where I can see them. A reminder of why I do this work, why I cannot stop until every traitor is found and punished." Catherine leaned forward. "Brogan, what happened to your family was a terrible injustice, but you cannot spend your entire life seeking revenge. At some point, you have to live. I am living. Are you? Because from where I sit, you are existing. There is a difference." His eyes met hers across the firelight, and for a moment she saw the loneliness in them, the vast emptiness that all his wealth and power could not fill. Then he smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his stern features. "You are a dangerous woman, Catherine Griffiths. You see too much." "Someone has to," she replied, smiling back. And sitting there in the firelight, Catherine realized something terrifying. This arrangement, this carefully constructed facade, was becoming real. She was beginning to care for this damaged, driven man who hid his heart behind walls of ice. And if she was not careful, she was going to fall in love with him, if she had not already started. If you're still here after all that, it shows you find the story interesting. If so, then do me this one favor. Hit subscribe on Forbidden Secret Love Chronicles. Also, drop a comment. Tell me, do you think Catherine can truly break through the Iron Duke's walls? Your thoughts aren't just engagement stats to me. They matter. The music room at the Iron Estate had been silent for years before Catherine discovered it. She found it by accident one afternoon, while exploring the West Wing, drawn by the shape of tall windows she could see from the gardens. When she pushed open the heavy door, dust motes danced in the afternoon light, swirling around a magnificent grand piano that sat like a sleeping beast in the center of the room. Sheet music lay scattered across a nearby table, yellowed with age. "My mother's," Brogan said from behind her, making Catherine jump. "She played beautifully. After she died, I could not bear to hear music in this house." Catherine turned to face him. And now, he stepped into the room, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. "Now I think perhaps it is time to remember that silence is not the same as peace." He moved to a cabinet against the wall and withdrew a gramophone, its brass horn gleaming despite the dust. "There is something I need to teach you before the masquerade next week." "The masquerade?" "At my estate, an annual tradition I have neglected for 5 years. It is time to revive it, and Connor Arnold will certainly attend. We need to be convincing, Catherine. More convincing than we have been." He cranked the gramophone, and after a moment, a waltz began to play, tinny but clear. "Dance with me. A real dance. Not a performance for an audience." Catherine's heart began to race. "We danced at the gala. That was strategy. This is practice." He extended his hand. "Trust me." She placed her hand in his, and he pulled her close, closer than propriety allowed, closer than he had held her in the ballroom with all of London watching. His hand settled at her waist, and she could feel the warmth of his palm through the fabric of her dress. They began to move, and Catherine realized immediately that this was different. At the gala, Brogan had been the Iron Duke, every movement calculated for maximum effect. Now, He was simply a man teaching a woman to dance, and his touch was gentle in a way that made her ache. "You are thinking too much," he murmured, his breath warm against her temple. "Stop counting steps. Feel the music." "I am not very good at this," Catherine admitted. "You are better than you think. You are just afraid of making mistakes." He spun her slowly, bringing her back against his chest. "But there are no mistakes here, Catherine. Just movement. Just us." The words settled over her like a caress. Just us. When had this stopped being an arrangement and started becoming something neither of them had names for? She let herself relax into his lead, following the subtle pressure of his hand, the shift of his weight. They moved together through the dusty room as the afternoon light slanted through the windows, painting everything gold. "Tell me about the masquerade," Catherine said softly. "It was my mother's favorite event. She believed that masks allowed people to be honest in ways they never could be face to face. The anonymity freed them." He guided her through a turn. "After she died, I stopped hosting. It felt wrong to celebrate when she was gone. But you will host it now. For you. For this." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "Connor will come because he cannot resist the opportunity to see us together, to look for weaknesses. But he will not be the only one watching. Several families I have been investigating will be there. The masquerade gives me the perfect opportunity to observe them without their usual guards up." Catherine nodded, understanding. The mission was still the priority. Justice for Brogan's family, vindication for her father. This moment, this dance, was just preparation. But when his hand tightened on her waist, and his eyes darkened as he looked at her, Catherine knew she was lying to herself. This had become about so much more than strategy. The music ended, but neither of them moved. They stood in the center of the room, Catherine's hand still in Brogan's, his arm still around her waist. The silence stretched, heavy with things neither of them dared to say. "Catherine?" Brogan began, his voice rough. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Mrs. Blackwood appeared, her expression apologetic. "Your Grace, forgive the interruption. There is a matter that requires your attention in the study." Brogan released Catherine, stepping back with visible reluctance. "Of course. Catherine, we will continue your lessons tomorrow." But as he left the room, Catherine saw something in his expression that made her pulse quicken. Whatever was happening between them, he felt it too. And he was just as terrified of it as she was. The preparations for the masquerade consumed the next week. The Iron Estate transformed before Catherine's eyes. Servants polished silver and crystal until everything gleamed. Florists arrived with wagon loads of white roses and dark ivy. Seamstresses took over an entire parlor, creating costumes and masks for the guests who would arrive without their own. Catherine's own costume was a masterpiece. A gown of midnight blue silk with silver embroidery that caught the light like stars. Her mask was delicate filigree, shaped like a swan. But beneath the excitement of preparation, Catherine sensed something wrong. She caught servants whispering in corners who fell silent when she approached. "Mrs." Blackwood looked worried, though she denied anything was amiss when Catherine asked. And Brogan had become distant again, spending long hours locked in the North Tower, emerging only for meals and their daily dance lessons. It was during one of these lessons, 3 days before the masquerade, that Catherine finally confronted him. "Something is wrong," she said, as they moved through a complicated series of turns. "Do not tell me otherwise. I can see it in your face." Brogan missed a step, something she had never seen him do before. He recovered quickly, but the damage was done. He was rattled. "I received intelligence yesterday," he said finally. "Connor Arnold has been asking questions about the estate, about the household staff, about you." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest he is planning something. My sources say he has been spending time with some of the servants from noble houses, the ones who need money badly enough to sell information." Brogan's jaw tightened. "I believe he is trying to plant someone in my household." Catherine felt cold. "To spy on us?" Or worse, to sabotage us. I have had my most trusted men questioning the staff, but so far, everyone appears loyal. He pulled her closer, and Catherine realized the gesture was protective. I should cancel the masquerade. It is too dangerous. No, Catherine said firmly. If you cancel, Connor wins. He has made you afraid. Besides, we know he is planning something now. We can prepare. Catherine, you taught me to stand my ground, Brogan. You told me I was stronger than I believed. Let me prove it. He looked at her for a long moment, and Catherine saw the war in his expression, the desire to keep her safe warring with his respect for her strength. Finally, he nodded. But you stay close to me at the masquerade. Every moment. Promise me. I promise. That night, unable to sleep, Catherine wandered the corridors of the estate. She found herself drawn to the North Tower, to the room where Brogan kept his evidence and his secrets. The door was ajar, which was unusual. Brogan was meticulous about locking it. Catherine pushed it open cautiously and stepped inside. The room was in disarray. Papers scattered across the table, drawers hanging open. Someone had been searching for something, and then Catherine saw it, lying on the floor near the window, as if it had been dropped in haste. A leather-bound book, black as midnight, with no title on its cover. She picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. The black ledger. It had to be. Page after page of names, dates, transactions, evidence of treason, of corruption, of crimes that would destroy dozens of noble families if this information became public. And there, near the middle of the book, she found her father's name. But the entry was not what she expected. It detailed how the Arnold family had forged shipping documents in Edward Griffith's name, how they had manipulated financial records to make it appear he was embezzling funds. It was proof of her father's innocence. Catherine's hands shook as she read. This was what she had been promised: vindication, justice. But as she continued reading, she found something else. Notes in Brogan's handwriting, outlining a plan. He had known about Connor's intentions to plant a spy. More than that, he had anticipated it. The ledger was bait, deliberately left where it could be found. Brogan was setting a trap, using the most valuable evidence he possessed to lure Connor into making a mistake that would expose his entire operation. And Catherine was part of that trap. She heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly closed the ledger. Brogan appeared in the doorway, his expression going hard when he saw what she held. "Put that down," he said quietly. "You were using me," Catherine said, her voice barely above a whisper. "All of this, the engagement, bringing me here, it was all part of your plan to catch Connor." "Catherine, the ledger. You left it where someone could find it. You knew Connor would try to steal it, to use it against you, and you let me stay here, knowing I would be implicated when it disappeared." She felt tears burning her eyes. Did any of it mean anything? The dances, the conversations, the moments when you looked at me like I was more than just a piece on your chessboard? Brogan crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping her shoulders. Everything meant something. "Catherine, listen to me. Yes, I anticipated Connor would make a move. Yes, I prepared for it. But I never intended to put you in real danger. The ledger contains copies. The originals are secured elsewhere. If Connor steals this, he steals nothing but his own damnation. Then why not tell me? Why keep me in the dark? Because I needed your reactions to be genuine. Connor is clever, Catherine. If he suspected for even a moment that we knew of his plans, he would disappear, and we would never get another chance to stop him." Brogan's hands gentled on her shoulders. "But you were never meant to be hurt by this. You were never meant to be anything but protected." "Protected or used?" Catherine pulled away from him. "I cannot tell the difference anymore." "Then let me show you." Brogan moved to the desk and pulled out a document, sealed with red wax. "This is a full pardon for your father, signed by the king himself. I obtained it 3 days ago. Connor's theft of the ledger was never necessary for your father's freedom. I had already secured it. Catherine stared at the document, then at Brogan. Why not tell me? Because I wanted you to stay, he said simply. Not because you needed me, but because you wanted to. I wanted the choice to be yours, Catherine. I wanted you to choose me, not the vindication I could provide. The words hung in the air between them. Catherine felt her anger draining away, replaced by something more complicated. He had manipulated her, yes, but he had also freed her, given her back her father, her future, her choice. You are an impossible man, she said finally. I know. You should have trusted me with the truth. I know that too. Catherine looked down at the black ledger in her hands. So what happens now? We wait for Connor to steal this? We do better than that. We catch him in the act, with witnesses who matter. At the masquerade, with half of London's elite present, Connor will make his move. And when he does, we will be ready. Brogan took the ledger from her hands and set it deliberately on the desk. But I need to know you are with me, Catherine. Truly with me, knowing everything, because after tomorrow night, there is no going back. Catherine met his gaze. I am with you. But Brogan, after this is done, after Connor is caught and my father is cleared, we need to talk, really talk, about what this is between us. Something vulnerable flickered in his expression. I would like that. The night of the masquerade arrived with unseasonable fog that rolled across the grounds of the Iron Estate, giving everything an ethereal quality. Carriages began arriving at sunset, depositing masked guests who gasped at the transformation of the house. Every room blazed with candlelight. Musicians played in the ballroom. The gardens had been strung with lanterns that glowed like fallen stars. Catherine descended the main staircase in her midnight blue gown, her swan mask in place. At the bottom, Brogan waited, dressed in black with a silver wolf mask that somehow made him look more dangerous than any title ever could. When she reached him, he took her hand and brought it to his lips. You are breathtaking, he murmured. You are not looking too terrible yourself, she replied, trying for levity even as her heart raced. They moved through the ballroom together, greeting guests, dancing, playing their parts perfectly. But Catherine could feel the tension in Brogan's body, the way his eyes constantly scanned the crowd. Somewhere in this glittering assembly, Connor Arnold was watching. Somewhere, he was planning his move. She spotted him near midnight, wearing a red devil's mask that seemed entirely too appropriate. He was watching them dance, his posture rigid with barely contained anger. When the music ended, Brogan leaned close to Catherine. He is going to make his move soon. Stay in the ballroom. No matter what happens, do not leave this room. Brogan. But he was already walking away, heading toward the doors that led to the rest of the house. Catherine watched him go, her stomach tight with dread. She trusted him, but she also knew Connor. The man she had once planned to marry was cruel and unpredictable, and he had nothing left to lose. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Catherine danced with other guests, smiled and made conversation. But her attention was always on the doors. Where was Brogan? What was happening? Finally, she could stand it no longer. She slipped through the crowd and into the corridor beyond, following the path Brogan had taken toward the North Tower. She found them in the study. Brogan stood near the desk, his mask removed, his expression carved from stone. Connor was there too, and in his hands he held the black ledger. But they were not alone. 3 other men stood in the room, and Catherine recognized them. Lord Ashford, the King's private secretary, Sir Edmund Price, Chief Magistrate of London, and standing in the shadows near the window, masked but unmistakable in his bearing, the King himself. Your Majesty, Connor was saying, his voice shaking with triumphant rage. I present to you proof of the Duke of Duncan's corruption. This ledger contains evidence of blackmail, of illegal surveillance, of the Duke abusing his position to destroy noble families. He is the traitor, not me. Is that so? The King stepped forward, and his voice was dry as old parchment. "Please, Mr. Arnold, enlighten us. What exactly does that ledger contain?" Connor opened the book with shaking hands and began to read. As he did, his expression changed from triumph to confusion to dawning horror. "No, this is not right. These are not the entries that should be here. On the contrary," Brogan said calmly, "those are exactly the entries that should be there. A complete documentation of your family's treason, the selling of military intelligence, the framing of an innocent merchant, the attempted assassination of a member of the King's Council who was getting too close to your operation. It is all there, Connor, in your own father's handwriting. This is a forgery, a lie." Connor looked wildly around the room. "He planted this evidence. He is framing me just as he has framed dozens of others." "Actually," the king said, "the Duke has been working at my direct command for the past 5 years. Every investigation, every piece of evidence, has been reviewed and verified by my most trusted advisors. What you hold in your hands, Mr. Arnold, is the result of 18 months of painstaking work that you just confirmed by stealing that ledger from the Duke's private study in front of 3 witnesses." Connor's face went white. He looked at Catherine, standing in the doorway, and something like understanding crossed his features. You were part of this. The helpless victim. The woman who needed saving. It was all an act." "No," Catherine said, stepping into the room. "I was never part of Brogan's investigation. But I stopped being your victim the moment I asked him to dance. You spent months trying to break me, Connor. Trying to convince me I was worthless, that my family deserved their disgrace. But the only disgrace here is yours." The king nodded to Sir Edmund. "Take him, and send men to arrest his father and brothers. The crown does not tolerate traitors." As guards appeared to escort Connor away, he turned one last time to Brogan. "This is not over, Duncan. My family has connections you cannot imagine." "Had connections?" Brogan corrected. "Past tense. By morning, every family that supported your treason will be under investigation. Your empire is finished, Connor. You just do not know it yet." They dragged him away, still protesting, still threatening. When the study finally emptied, leaving only Catherine and Brogan, the silence was deafening. Catherine's legs felt weak. She sank into a chair, the reality of what had just happened washing over her. "You planned all of it," she said. "The masquerade, the ledger left where he could find it. Even the king being here to witness the theft." "Yes." Brogan knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. "But Catherine, I need you to understand. The trap was for Connor, not for you. You were never bait. You were my ally, whether you knew it or not. Your strength, your resilience, your refusal to be broken by him, that was what gave me the courage to see this through. I could have helped more if you had told me. You helped more than you know. Catherine, without you, I would still be locked in this house, nursing my grief and my rage. You reminded me that justice and revenge are not the same thing, that there is a life worth living beyond the pursuit of those who wronged me." He reached up and gently removed her mask, then his own. "You saved me." Catherine felt tears streaming down her face. "You saved me too." "Then let us call it even." Brogan stood, pulling her to her feet. "There is something I need to show you." He led her through the house, past the ballroom where the masquerade continued in oblivious celebration, to a set of doors Catherine had never noticed before. Brogan pushed them open, and Catherine gasped. It was a private ballroom, smaller than the main one, but infinitely more beautiful. Moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a floor inlaid with silver stars. And in the center of the room, on a table, sat the pardon for her father and another document she did not recognize. "What is this?" she asked. "Read it." Catherine picked up the second document. It was a marriage contract, but not the typical arrangement of property and dowries. This contract promised partnership, respect, The joining of two estates, but the preservation of her independence. It promised that her father would be given a position in the duchy's trade operations, that Catherine herself would have authority over the household and the right to pursue her own interests and education. It was a marriage of equals. I know this started as an arrangement, Brogan said quietly. A trade of mutual benefit. But Catherine, somewhere along the way it became real for me. You became essential, not as part of a plan, but as the woman I think about when I wake and dream about when I sleep. I am not good at this. I have spent years building walls around my heart, but you walk through them as if they were made of paper. He took her hands again. I am asking you to marry me, not for 6 months, not as part of an arrangement, but forever, as my true wife, my partner, my equal. Will you? Catherine looked at the man before her. The Iron Duke who was not iron at all, just a man who had been hurt and had learned to protect himself. A man who had risked everything to give her justice. A man who had shown her that strength and gentleness could exist in the same heart. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Brogan's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper, pouring years of loneliness and longing into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Dance with me, he said. A real dance. No audience. No strategy. Just us. There was no music, but they did not need it. They moved together in the moonlit ballroom, Catherine's head resting on Brogan's shoulder, his arms around her waist. They danced slowly, savoring the moment, the victory, the beginning of something neither of them had expected to find. What happens now? Catherine asked. Now, we live. I will clear your father's name publicly. We will marry. You will help me remember how to be human instead of just a weapon for the crown. He pulled back to look at her. And perhaps eventually, we will fill this house with the sounds it was meant to have. Laughter, music, children, if you want them. Life, Catherine. We will have a life. Together, she said. Together, he agreed. 3 months later, Catherine Griffiths became Catherine Duncan, Duchess of the North, in a ceremony attended by the king himself. Her father walked her down the aisle, his name cleared, his business restored with the help of Brogan's connections and resources. Connor Arnold and his family faced trial for treason, their titles stripped, their fortunes seized. The social circles that had once shunned Catherine now clamored for her attention, but she had learned to be selective about whose opinions mattered. The Iron Estate no longer felt like a fortress. Catherine had opened the curtains, filled the rooms with flowers, convinced Brogan to host dinners and gatherings that brought warmth and laughter to the old stone walls. The music room saw daily use now. Sometimes Catherine played the piano while Brogan worked at his desk nearby. Sometimes he would stop working and ask her to dance, pulling her away from the keys and into his arms. They were not perfect. Brogan still had nightmares about his family. Catherine still had moments when Connor's cruel words echoed in her mind. But they faced these demons together, learning that healing was not about forgetting the past, but about refusing to let it define the future. One evening, as they danced in their private ballroom beneath the stars, Catherine looked up at her husband and smiled. "Do you remember the night we met, when I asked you to dance? I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever seen," Brogan replied, walking up to the most feared man in the room and asking for his help. "I was terrified. So was I. Terrified of what you made me feel. Terrified that I might actually have a chance at happiness again." He spun her gently. "Thank you for being brave enough to ask, Catherine. Thank you for saving me." "Thank you for saying yes," she replied. "Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away." They danced until the moon set, two people who had been broken by betrayal, learning to be whole again, in each other's arms. The Iron Duke and the merchant's daughter. The man who had forgotten how to trust, and the woman who had thought herself unworthy of love. Together, They built something neither could have created alone. An empire not of fear, but of hope. Not of revenge, but of justice. Not of isolation, but of love that conquered all. And there you have it. Catherine and Brogan got their justice, their happy ending, their forever. But let me ask you something. How many times have you watched a story and felt that ache in your chest, wishing you could stay in that world just a little bit longer? Wishing you knew what happened next, or what happened before, or how the side characters found their own happiness. That is what we do here at Forbidden Secret Love Chronicles. We give you worlds you can get lost in, characters who feel like friends, love stories that make you believe in second chances. But here is the thing. I can only keep bringing you these stories if you are here with me. So if this story made you feel something, if Catherine and Brogan's journey mattered to you, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button, not later, not after one more video. Now, because the algorithm does not care about your intentions. It cares about your actions. And every subscription tells it that this content matters, that these stories deserve to be seen. Drop a comment and tell me what you thought. Did you see the twist coming? Which moment made your heart race? Are you Team Catherine or Team Brogan? I read every single comment, and they fuel me to keep writing these stories for you. Like this video. Share it with someone who loves a good romance with a backbone. Someone who appreciates characters who fight for their happy ending instead of just falling into it. And turn on that notification bell so you never miss when the next story drops. Because trust me, what is coming next is going to blow your mind. Welcome to the family. Welcome home. And thank you for letting me tell you stories. I will see you in the next one.